The bullet had grazed Yates Jensen's shoulder during a cattle rustling gone wrong in the spring of 1883. But the wound to his heart had cut far deeper and never healed. 5 years had passed since he buried his younger brother on a windswept hill overlooking the sprawling ranch they had built together in Jordan Valley, Oregon. And in all that time, not a single soul had witnessed Yates crack even the faintest smile. The other ranchers spoke of him in hushed tones at the general store, calling him the Stone Man, the ghost who walked among the living but never truly joined them. At 32 years old, Yates had become as harsh and unforgiving as the high desert landscape that surrounded his property, all sharp edges and barren spaces where warmth once lived. The September morning arrived crisp and clear, carrying the scent of sagebrush across the valley. Yates stood on his porch as the sun painted the Awahi Mountains gold, his weathered hands wrapped around a tin cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. He barely noticed. The routine of existing had replaced the joy of living, and he moved through his days with mechanical precision, tending to cattle, mending fences, and speaking only when absolutely necessary to his 3 ranch hands who knew better than to attempt conversation. The stage from Boise arrived every Thursday at noon, kicking up clouds of dust as it rolled down the main street, past the Lucky Dollar Saloon and Patterson's Mercantile. Yates had no reason to watch its arrival this particular afternoon, but he happened to be loading supplies onto his wagon when the driver pulled the team of horses to a stop with a shout. The door opened, and a woman emerged in a traveling suit of deep green wool that looked entirely impractical for the Oregon high desert. She stepped down carefully, one gloved hand gripping her carpetbag, the other shading her eyes against the brilliant sunlight. Sophia Zimmerman had left Boston 3 weeks earlier with nothing but determination, and a letter from her late aunt's lawyer informing her that she had inherited a small property in Jordan Valley. The journey westward had tested every ounce of her resolve, but at 26 years old, she had already survived enough disappointment to know that running toward something new beat standing still in misery. Her engagement to a promising banker had ended 6 months prior, when she discovered his promises extended to at least 2 other women, and her parents had made it clear that spinsterhood loomed as her only remaining option if she did not lower her standards and accept whatever proposal came next. So she had done what any reasonable woman with nothing left to lose would do. She packed her belongings and pointed herself toward the setting sun. The town consisted of perhaps 20 buildings clustered along a dusty main thoroughfare, with scattered homesteads and ranches spreading out into the valley beyond. Mountains rose in every direction, their slopes covered in golden grass and dark junipers. The sky stretched impossibly wide, bigger than any sky Sophia had ever seen, and the silence felt almost physical after the constant noise of city life. She stood on the wooden sidewalk, suddenly aware that every person within view had stopped their activities to stare at her. Yates noticed her immediately, though he tried not to. City women were rare enough in Jordan Valley, but something about this particular stranger caught his attention despite his best efforts to remain indifferent. She held herself with a straightness that suggested either confidence or fear, and her dark hair, pinned beneath a small hat, gleamed almost black in the sunlight. He turned back to his wagon, determined to finish loading and leave before anyone could attempt to introduce them or rope him into whatever drama her arrival would inevitably cause. Sophia approached the nearest person, an elderly man sweeping the steps of the general store. "Excuse me, sir. I'm looking for the property belonging to Margaret Holloway. I was told it's somewhere in town." The old man squinted at her, then called over his shoulder, "Henry, this lady is asking about old Maggie's place. A younger man emerged from the store, wiping his hands on his apron. He looked Sophia up and down with undisguised curiosity. "You the niece from back east? We heard someone might be coming. Maggie's cabin is about a mile west of town, follows the creek. But miss, I ought to tell you, that place has been sitting empty for near about 8 months since she passed. Might not be in the best condition." "I understand," Sophia said, maintaining her composure despite the growing realization that she might have made a terrible mistake. "Is there someone who could take me there? I can pay for the transportation." "Ben Fletcher runs folks out to the ranches sometimes," Henry said, gesturing vaguely down the street. "But he's probably sleeping off last night at the saloon. Might be afternoon before he's in any shape to drive a wagon." Yates listened to this exchange while pretending to examine a coil of rope. Something about the woman's voice, steady despite the obvious uncertainty in her situation, stirred a feeling he had thought long dead. He crushed it immediately. Getting involved in other people's problems led nowhere good, and he had learned that lesson thoroughly. He threw the last sack of grain into his wagon bed with more force than necessary. "I can walk," Sophia announced. "If you could just point me in the right direction." "Walk?" Henry looked scandalized. "Miss, it's a mile in this sun and you're wearing city shoes. Plus, you don't know the area. Could be rattlesnakes this time of year, and the cabin might not even be safe to enter without checking the roof first." Yates tied down his supplies with sharp, efficient movements. None of his business. The woman would figure it out or she would leave. People came and went. Nothing stayed. Nothing mattered enough to risk feeling anything again. "I've walked farther than a mile before," Sophia said, her voice developing an edge. "I crossed half a continent to get here. I think I can manage another mile." Something in those words made Yates pause. The sheer foolishness of her statement combined with the stubborn determination behind it reminded him, painfully, of his brother Thomas, who had always charged forward into situations without proper preparation, relying on enthusiasm to compensate for planning. That quality had gotten Thomas killed, and apparently it ran strong in city women too. Against every instinct, against every wall he had carefully constructed, Yates heard himself speak. "Holloway Place is on my way." The words came out rough, unpracticed. "I'll take you." 3 heads turned to stare at him in genuine shock. Yates Jensen had not volunteered to help anyone with anything in 5 years. He barely acknowledged other people's existence. Sophia approached his wagon, her green eyes assessing him with an intelligence that made him want to immediately retract his offer. "That's very kind of you. I'm Sophia Zimmerman. Jensen." He did not offer his first name. He did not offer his hand. He simply gestured to the wagon seat with a tilt of his head. She climbed up with some difficulty, hampered by her long skirt and the height of the seat. Yates made no move to assist her, and once she had settled herself, he snapped the reins and started the team moving without another word. They rolled out of town heading west, following a rutted track that paralleled a small creek lined with willows. The silence stretched between them for several minutes. Sophia studied the landscape, so different from anything she had known in Boston. The valley floor spread wide and relatively flat, covered in pale grass and scattered sagebrush, but mountains formed walls on every horizon. The air smelled of dust and something sharp she could not identify, and the heat pressed down despite the season. She glanced at the man beside her, noting the rigid set of his jaw, the way his eyes remained fixed on the trail ahead, the complete absence of any welcoming expression. Finally, unable to bear the awkward quiet any longer, she ventured, "Have you lived in Jordan Valley long, Mr. Jensen?" "Yes." That single word, delivered flat and final, was apparently the extent of his conversational skills. Sophia waited for elaboration that never came. She tried again. It's very beautiful country, different from what I'm used to. Yes. Another verbal dead end. Sophia felt irritation beginning to override her gratitude for the ride. She had met unfriendly people before, but this man's terseness bordered on rudeness. Still, he was helping her, and she needed all the help she could get in this unfamiliar place. The man at the store mentioned my aunt passed away 8 months ago. Did you know her, some? Was she well liked in the community? Yes. Sophia waited for more. None came. She turned to look at him directly, studying his profile. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with sun-darkened skin and lines around his eyes that suggested years of squinting into bright horizons. His hair, dark brown and slightly too long, curled at the nape of his neck beneath a battered hat. He wore typical ranch clothing, all in shades of brown and tan, and his hands on the reins were scarred and calloused. He might have been handsome under different circumstances, if his face ever relaxed from its current expression of grim endurance. "Mr. Jensen, I don't mean to be forward, but you seem determined to make this the most uncomfortable wagon ride possible. If you didn't want to help me, you shouldn't have offered." That got a reaction, though a small one. His jaw tightened further and something flickered in his dark eyes. "Did not say I wanted to help, said I would take you. Two different things." "I see. And is everyone in Jordan Valley this warm and welcoming, or am I just lucky?" "You want warm and welcoming, you should have stayed in Boston." Sophia blinked. "How did you know I was from Boston? Your accent. Plus Henry mentioned you were from back east." He paused, and she thought that might be the end of it, but he surprised her by continuing. "Jordan Valley is not a place for city women. If you are smart, you will sell whatever your aunt left you and go back where you belong." The blunt dismissal stung more than it should have. Sophia lifted her chin. "What I do with my inheritance is none of your concern, and you know nothing about where I belong." "Know enough." "Really? What exactly do you know, Mr. Jensen?" He glanced at her then, just briefly, and she saw something sharp and assessing in his look. "You are wearing clothes that will not last a week out here. Your skin is pale, which means you are not used to this sun. You talk like someone educated, probably from money, which means you have never done the kind of work that living out here requires. Your shoes are completely wrong, and you have that look." "What look?" "The look people get when they are running away from something and think a new place will fix whatever is broken inside them. It never does." The words hit harder than Sophia wanted to admit. She turned away, staring at the creek as they passed. "You seem to have me all figured out, Mr. Jensen." That must be a useful talent, being able to judge someone completely within 5 minutes of meeting them. "Usually right. And what if you are wrong about me? Then I will be surprised." He said it without inflection, as though the possibility held no real interest for him. They rode in silence for a while longer. The track curved away from the creek, climbing a gentle rise. At the top, Yates pulled the wagon to a halt and pointed. "There." Sophia followed his gesture and felt her heart sink. A small cabin stood in a hollow below, surrounded by overgrown weeds and leaning slightly to one side. Part of the roof had collapsed, and the single visible window had lost most of its glass. A dilapidated shed stood nearby, its door hanging from one hinge. The whole property looked abandoned and forlorn, a forgotten place slowly returning to the earth. "That cannot be it," Sophia whispered. "It is." She sat frozen, unable to process the gap between her desperate hopes and this dismal reality. The lawyer's letter had mentioned a property, and she had allowed herself to imagine something modest but livable, a fresh start in a small house with a garden maybe, somewhere she could establish herself and build a new life. This ruin could not possibly sustain anyone. Yates watched her face, recognizing the exact moment when hope crumbled into despair. He had seen that expression before in his own mirror, and something about witnessing it on this stranger's face made his chest tighten in a way he did not appreciate. "Told you," he said, but his voice lacked triumph. Sophia blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in front of this cold man. "Could you take me down there, please?" He drove the wagon down the slope and pulled up in front of the cabin. Sophia climbed down before he could offer assistance, not that he showed any signs of doing so. She approached the door, which hung partially open, and pushed it wide. Inside, dust and leaves covered every surface. A rough table stood against one wall, and a rusted stove occupied the corner. The back section of the cabin lay open to the sky where the roof had failed. Small animal tracks patterned the dusty floor. Yates followed her inside, checking the structural beams with a practiced eye. Main section is still sound. Roof needs complete replacement on the back half. Floor is good. Stove might work if cleaned properly. Could be livable if you put some work into it. Could be livable, Sophia repeated, her voice hollow. "I don't even know how to replace a roof, Mr. Jensen. I don't know how to do any of this." "Then you should sell and leave, like I said." She turned to face him, and he was struck by the sudden fire in her eyes. "Is that what you do when things are difficult? Just give up and walk away?" His expression shuddered completely. "You do not know anything about me." "No, I don't." "Because you haven't said more than 10 words together since we met. But I'll tell you what I do know. I know that giving up is easy. Running away is easy. I did enough of that in Boston, staying in a life that made me miserable because it was comfortable and expected. I came here because I want something different, even if it's difficult, especially if it's difficult." Yates stared at her for a long moment. Then, to her absolute astonishment, he asked, "Why did you really leave Boston?" The question, delivered in that same flat tone but with genuine curiosity behind it, caught her off guard. It was not the question she expected from this taciturn stranger. Not "how will you survive?" or "what were you thinking?" but "why did you really leave?" As though he understood that the real reasons went deeper than inheritance and opportunity. "Why do you want to know?" she countered. "Don't know. Don't usually care about other people's stories anymore." He said it like a confession, as though the words surprised him as much as they surprised her. Sophia studied him carefully, sensing something shifting beneath his hostile exterior. "I was engaged to a man who turned out to be engaged to several women simultaneously. When I confronted him, he acted as though I was being unreasonable for expecting exclusivity. My parents suggested I overlook it since he had good financial prospects. Everyone around me seemed to think I should be grateful for any proposal at all at my age, as though being 26 and unmarried made me desperate. So I left. I'm here because I would rather risk failure on my own terms than accept success on everyone else's." Yates was quiet for a long time. Then he walked to the broken window and looked out at the valley beyond. 5 years ago, my brother Thomas and I had this ranch built up to something good. We had over 500 head of cattle, good water, decent grazing. Then rustlers hit us in the spring. Thomas went after them alone while I was in Boise buying breeding stock. They shot him and left him to die on the North Range. By the time I found him, he had been dead for 2 days, and the cattle were scattered across 3 counties. Sophia's breath caught. She had pushed him to share something, but she had not expected this raw wound. I stopped smiling that day, Yates continued, still looking out the window. Stopped seeing much point in any of it. People said I should move on, find a new purpose, act like Thomas had not been the only family I had left. So I understand something about other people thinking they know what you should do with your pain. He turned back to face her. But I'll tell you the truth that no one wants to hear. Coming to a new place does not fix what's broken. You bring it all with you. Maybe, Sophia said softly, but at least here I can be broken in peace without everyone telling me to smile about it. Something flickered across Yates' face, too quick to identify. He walked toward the door, then paused. I can send one of my ranch hands over tomorrow with roofing materials. He will fix it properly. You can pay me back when you sell the place. And if I don't sell, then you can pay me back in trade. I need someone to do bookkeeping for the ranch. My numbers are a mess and I do not have the patience for it. If you are educated like you sound, you might be useful. It was hardly a gracious offer, but something about the grudging nature of it touched Sophia more than smooth words would have. Why are you helping me, Mr. Jensen? You made it clear you don't want me here. He was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Finally, he said, because you asked me an honest question, and no one has done that in a very long time. Everyone else just tells me what I should do, how I should feel, who I should be. You asked why I really left. Past tense. As though you understood I left somewhere too, even if I never physically moved. He met her eyes then, really met them, and she saw depths of pain that mirrored her own. I don't want you here. I don't want anyone anywhere. But I remember what it feels like to be alone in a place where everything is falling apart, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Before Sophia could respond, he strode out of the cabin and climbed onto his wagon. There is a boarding house in town, Mrs. Chen's place above the restaurant. She will give you a room cheap. Stay there tonight. My man will come tomorrow to assess the work needed. He snapped the reins and the wagon rolled forward. Mr. Jensen, Sophia called after him. What's your first name? He looked back over his shoulder. Yates. Thank you, Yates. He nodded once, then drove away toward his ranch, leaving Sophia standing in front of her ruined inheritance with the first genuine smile she had felt in months pulling at her lips. Because that hard, bitter man had just revealed himself to be something else entirely, and she suspected he had surprised himself as much as he had surprised her. The boarding house turned out to be exactly as described, a series of small rooms above a Chinese restaurant that filled the air with unfamiliar but delicious smells. Mrs. Chen, a tiny woman with sharp eyes and quick movements, took one look at Sophia and quoted a price that seemed more than reasonable. The room was clean and simple, with a narrow bed, a small table, and a window overlooking the main street. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself, finally, to feel the full weight of exhaustion from her journey and the shocking reality of her situation. But underneath the tiredness, something else bloomed. Possibility. And maybe, just maybe, connection. The next morning arrived with brilliant sunshine and the sound of hammering from somewhere down the street. Sophia dressed in her simplest traveling dress, already understanding that her Boston wardrobe would need immediate supplementation. She descended to the restaurant, where Mrs. Chen served her eggs and rice with strong tea and received detailed directions to the general store. Henry Patterson greeted her with considerably more enthusiasm than Yates had shown. Miss Zimmerman, heard you made it out to the Holloway place yesterday. Also heard Yates Jensen actually spoke to you, which is more than he does for most folks. You must have made quite an impression. I'm not sure impression is the right word, Sophia said diplomatically. He was helpful, though perhaps not enthusiastic about it. I need to purchase some more practical clothing if you carry such things. We've got work dresses and such, though they might need altering. My wife Sarah does seamstress work. She's in the back room now if you want to talk to her. Sarah Patterson turned out to be a pleasant woman in her 40s who took Sophia's measurements and showed her several sturdy dresses in practical fabrics. We don't get much call for fancy goods out here, Sarah explained. But these will last, and they're suitable for the climate. You'll want a wide-brimmed hat too, something to keep the sun off. That eastern complexion won't hold up long in this intensity. While Sarah marked alterations, she chatted easily about the town and its inhabitants. Jordan Valley has been here about 15 years, grown up around the ranching and mining in the area. We've got maybe 50 permanent residents in town, with another 100 scattered on the ranches and homesteads in the valley. It's a good community mostly. People help each other when needed. "And Yates Jensen?" Sophia asked, trying to sound casual. Henry seemed surprised that he spoke to me. Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. "Yates is a complicated situation. He and his brother came here about 8 years ago with nothing but determination and a few head of cattle. Built up the Jensen Ranch into one of the most successful operations in the valley. Thomas was the social one, always laughing and making friends. Yates was quieter, more serious, but you'd see him smile sometimes. Then Thomas died, and something in Yates just closed off completely. He still runs the ranch well, still deals honestly in business, but he doesn't connect with anyone anymore. Some folks think he's just cold by nature now, but I remember what he was like before. The grief changed him." "He mentioned his brother yesterday," Sophia said quietly. "Told me about what happened." Sarah's eyebrows rose. "Did he now? That's remarkable. Yates never talks about Thomas, not to anyone far as I know. He must have seen something in you, dear." Sophia was not sure what to make of that, so she changed the subject to practical matters about the cabin and what work it would require. Sarah provided useful information about local laborers and suppliers, and by the time Sophia left the store with a promise that her dresses would be ready in 3 days, she felt considerably more informed about her new situation. A wagon waited in front of Mrs. Chen's boarding house when Sophia returned, loaded with lumber and roofing materials. A young man with red hair and an easy smile stood beside it. "You Miss Zimmerman? I'm Charlie Porter. I work for Mr. Jensen. He sent me to fix up your aunt's cabin. Was going to head out there now if you want to ride along and show me what needs doing." The ride to the cabin proved considerably more pleasant than the previous day's journey. Charlie talked easily about the ranch, the valley, and local gossip, requiring little input from Sophia beyond the occasional encouraging sound. "Mr. Jensen is a fair boss," Charlie said. "Works hard himself, expects the same from us, but pays promptly and doesn't ask anything unreasonable. He's just not much for talking. Me and the other hands, we've learned to work around his moods. He wasn't always so grim, or so I've heard, but that was before my time. I came out here 2 years ago." At the cabin, Charlie assessed the damage with a professional eye. "Roof is the main problem. Couple of days' work to replace that back section. I'll need to shore up one wall too. There's some rot in the lower beams, but the structure is basically sound. Your aunt built well, or had someone build well for her. You planning to live here?" "I'm planning to try," Sophia said. "Though I'm discovering I have no practical knowledge of anything useful in this environment." Charlie grinned. "That's how most folks start out. You'll learn. Everyone does, or they leave. Jordan Valley has a way of teaching you whether you want to learn or not." He set to work immediately, and Sophia made herself useful by clearing debris from the cabin interior. The physical labor felt oddly satisfying after so many years of decorative uselessness in Boston society. She swept and scrubbed, finding furniture buried under dust and discovering that some of it was actually quite nice. A carved wooden trunk in the corner yielded linens and quilts that needed airing but were otherwise intact. A small bookshelf held a surprising collection of novels and practical guides. Her aunt, it seemed, had been a reader. Charlie worked steadily through the morning, and around noon, another rider appeared. Sophia recognized Yates immediately, though he rode a different horse than had pulled his wagon yesterday. He dismounted and walked over to where Charlie was measuring lumber, spoke briefly, then headed to where Sophia was shaking dust from a rug. "Charlie treating you right?" "Yes, he's been very helpful and talkative, which is a refreshing change." Was that almost a smile that flickered across his face? It passed too quickly to be certain. "Charlie talks enough for 3 people. Useful quality in a ranch hand means I don't have to." He glanced around at her progress. "You've been working. Did you expect me to sit and watch? Expected you to realize this was impossible and be on the next stage back to boys. Disappointed to find me still here. Not disappointed exactly." He seemed to consider his words carefully. "Surprised." Sophia set down the rug and faced him directly. "Yates, why did you really send Charlie to help me? And don't say it's just about the bookkeeping, because you could find someone else for that." He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight. "Told you yesterday. You asked an honest question. And that's all it takes. One question. When you have not had anyone ask you anything honest in 5 years, yes, that's all it takes." He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed unconscious and somehow vulnerable. "I'm not good at this. At talking, at connecting, at any of it anymore. But you stood there yesterday in your impractical clothes looking at that broken cabin, and you asked me about why I left something. Not where I went, or what I'm running toward, but what I left behind. As though the leaving mattered more than the arriving. That's the most understanding anyone has shown in years." Sophia felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through regions that had been cold since her engagement ended. "I asked, because I recognized something in you. That look you mentioned, the one people get when they're broken. I saw it in you too. Takes one to know one, I suppose." "Suppose so." He put his hat back on. "I came by to tell you that the offer about the bookkeeping is genuine. My records are a disaster. If you want work while you're deciding what to do with this place, I can use you at the ranch. Not charity. You'd be earning your keep and then some." "I accept. When do I start?" "Charlie will be done with the major repairs by tomorrow afternoon. Day after that if you're ready. I'll send someone to collect you in the morning. I can ride," Sophia said, then realized the problem. "Though I don't have a horse." "Your aunt's horse is probably still around somewhere. If not, I've got an extra mount you can use." He turned to leave, but Sophia called after him. "Yates, can I ask you something else?" He stopped but did not turn around. "Depends on the question. When was the last time you laughed?" His shoulders stiffened. "Why?" "Because I haven't laughed since I discovered my fiancée's betrayal, and misery loves company." He did turn then, and his eyes held something that might have been pain or might have been something else entirely. 5 years, 2 months and 16 days. The day before my brother died." He paused. "He told a terrible joke about a chicken and a whiskey barrel. It wasn't funny, but I laughed anyway because Thomas always committed so fully to his bad jokes. That was the last time." Sophia walked closer to him, close enough to see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "Thank you for telling me." "Why do you keep thanking me?" "Because you keep being honest when you could just as easily close me out. That takes courage." "It's not courage, it's exhaustion. I'm too tired to maintain all the walls all the time. You somehow slipped through before I could reinforce them." "I'm glad I did." They stood there for a moment, neither speaking, something electric and fragile building in the air between them. Then Yates stepped back, breaking the connection. "I should get back to the ranch. Charlie knows what he's doing. You're in good hands." He mounted his horse and rode away, and Sophia watched him go with an odd ache in her chest. Something was happening here, something unexpected and probably unwise. But after so many years of being wise and proper and careful, she found she did not mind the recklessness of it. Charlie completed the roof repairs by late afternoon the next day, along with fixing the wall rot and replacing the broken window glass. The cabin, while still sparse and simple, now kept out the elements and felt structurally sound. Sophia paid him from her limited funds, and he tipped his hat cheerfully before driving back toward the Jensen ranch. Alone for the first time in her new home, Sophia made up the bed with her aunt's linens and lit the stove to boil water for tea. The sun set in spectacular fashion, painting the western mountains in shades of orange and purple, and she sat in the doorway watching the light fade while coyotes called in the distance. The loneliness pressed in, as it had so many nights in Boston, but this time it felt different. Not quite so suffocating, as though there might be space here for loneliness to transform into something else. The next morning, Charlie arrived early with the promised horse, a sturdy bay mare with gentle eyes. "This is Daisy," he announced. "She was your aunt's horse. We've been keeping her at the Jensen place since Miss Holloway passed. Mr. Jensen wanted to make sure she was properly cared for until someone claimed her. She's a good mount, won't give you any trouble." Sophia approached the mare cautiously, extending her hand for Daisy to sniff. She had limited riding experience, mostly sedate trail rides during summers in the countryside, but she had at least basic knowledge. Charlie helped her mount and gave her quick reminders about handling and control. Then they set off toward the Jensen ranch at an easy pace. The ranch lay about 3 miles northeast of the cabin, occupying a particularly scenic section of the valley, where a larger creek provided reliable water year-round. The house itself surprised Sophia with its size and solid construction, a 2-story structure built of local stone and timber, with a wide porch and actual glass windows. Several outbuildings surrounded it, including a large barn, corrals, and bunkhouses. Cattle grazed in distant pastures, and the whole operation gave an impression of competent management. Yates emerged from the barn as they rode up, wiping his hands on a rag. "You made it. Charlie, thanks for bringing her. You can get back to checking that fence line on the North Range." Charlie tipped his hat and rode off, leaving Sophia alone with Yates once again. She dismounted, and this time he did step forward to take Daisy's reins. "She remember you?" Sophia asked. "Horses always remember. I'll get her settled in the barn. You can head inside. The office is the second door on the left. I'll be there in a minute." The house interior proved as well-maintained as the exterior, clean and organized if somewhat Spartan in decoration. The office held a large desk buried under papers, several filing cabinets, and shelves stacked with ledgers and documents. Sophia removed her riding gloves and began examining the chaos, quickly realizing that disaster had been an understatement. Records from different years mixed together randomly, receipts were loose and unsorted, and the handwriting varied from barely legible to completely incomprehensible. Yates entered and stood in the doorway, looking almost embarrassed. "It's bad, I know. Thomas used to handle all this. He had a system. After he died, I just kept throwing papers in here whenever they accumulated. Been meaning to organize it for years but never had the motivation. This will take weeks to sort out properly," Sophia said, but she felt energized rather than daunted. This was exactly the kind of concrete problem she could attack with logic and determination. "But it's not impossible. I'll need to create a proper filing system, separate everything by year and type, enter it all into new ledgers organized by category. Do you have current financial records at least? Bank statements, recent purchases? Some. It's in there somewhere. Of course it is." She could not help smiling. "Well, you certainly weren't exaggerating about needing help. I'll start by sorting everything into general categories. Where do you keep supplies?" "I'll need file folders, labels, New ledger books probably. There's a storage room down the hall with office supplies. Take whatever you need. I'll be around if you have questions, but I've got ranch work to attend to. There's water in the kitchen, and help yourself to anything in there if you get hungry. He left her to it, and Sophia rolled up her sleeves and dove into the chaos. The work proved absorbing, requiring enough focus to quiet the persistent anxiety that had plagued her since leaving Boston. Hours passed without her noticing, and she jumped when Yates appeared in the doorway around midday. "You missed lunch," he said, holding a plate with bread, cheese, and sliced apples. "Figured you might be too absorbed to remember to eat. You figured correctly." She accepted the plate gratefully. "Thank you. I've made some initial progress. Did you know you've been overpaying your feed supplier for the last 3 years? These invoices don't match the price list from your contract." Yates frowned and came closer to look at what she had spread across the desk. "How much overpaying?" "At least $15 a month based on what I'm seeing. That's nearly $200 a year." His jaw tightened. "That's enough to matter. Can you document it? I'll need to have a conversation with Hammond next time I'm in town. I'll prepare a complete comparison for you." She bit into the apple, suddenly ravenous. "This is fascinating, actually. I can see the whole financial story of your ranch unfolding through these records. The first 2 years were lean, barely breaking even. Then you had a major sale in year 3 that provided capital for expansion. The next 2 years show steady growth. Then 5 years ago, there's a sudden gap in the records for about 3 months, followed by major irregular expenses and several large purchases of cattle to rebuild the herd. That was after Thomas died. I had to rebuy most of what the rustlers took." His voice had gone flat again. Sophia looked up at him, seeing the pain that crossed his features. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up difficult memories. It's your job to examine the records. Can't avoid the difficult parts just because they're difficult." He leaned against the desk, close enough that she could smell the scent of hay and leather and something else, something that was just him. "You're good at this, at seeing patterns and making sense of chaos. It's one of the few genuinely useful skills I possess. My father was a banker. He believed daughters should be educated in practical matters as well as decorative ones, much to my mother's horror. I spent years helping him with his accounts before he retired. This is the first time I've been able to use that knowledge for something that actually matters. It matters here. A ranch this size lives or dies by whether the finances are managed properly. I've been lucky so far, but luck runs out eventually." They looked at each other for a long moment, and Sophia felt that same electric tension from the cabin building between them again. Yates straightened abruptly. "I should get back to work. Let me know if you need anything." He left quickly, almost as though escaping, and Sophia returned to the records with her thoughts in turmoil. Something was happening between them, something neither of them seemed equipped to handle. They were 2 broken people who had given up on connection, yet somehow they kept connecting despite themselves. The pattern repeated over the next 2 weeks. Sophia would arrive at the ranch each morning, work through the chaos of records, and slowly bring order to the financial disasters of 5 years. Yates would check on her periodically, bringing food or asking questions about what she discovered. Their conversations remained brief, but gradually grew less guarded. He told her about the ranch operations, about the challenges of cattle ranching in high desert country, about the seasonal rhythms that governed his life. She told him about Boston, about the suffocating expectations and the relief of escaping them, about her growing love for the stark beauty of Oregon. On a Friday afternoon, Sophia finished entering the last of the sorted records into new ledgers and sat back with satisfaction. The office, once chaotic, now reflected organized efficiency. Every document filed properly, every expense tracked, every income source documented. She had even created a system for ongoing maintenance that would prevent future accumulation of chaos. Yates walked in just as she was admiring her work. He stopped short, staring at the transformed space. "Is that my office?" "It is." Everything sorted, filed, cross-referenced, and entered into new ledgers organized by category and year. "I've also prepared a summary of your current financial position. Identified several areas where you're losing money due to inefficiency or overcharging, and created a simple system for keeping current records organized going forward." He walked slowly around the room, opening drawers and examining the labels, pulling out ledgers and flipping through the neat entries. His expression remained unreadable, but something in his posture suggested he was affected. Finally, he turned to her. "Sophia, this is remarkable. I've been avoiding this room for years because it felt like facing a mountain I couldn't climb. You just made it manageable. That's what I do. I make chaos manageable." She smiled at him. "Though I have to say, your finances are actually in better shape than the records suggested. You've been profitable every year despite the bookkeeping disaster. With the corrections I've identified, you'll add several $100s annually to your bottom line." "Several $100s." He shook his head. "That's significant. How much do I owe you for this?" "We agreed I'd work it off against the cabin repairs, remember? This is worth far more than roof repairs. Name a fair price." Sophia considered. She needed money, certainly, but more than that she needed a reason to stay connected to this man who had somehow become important to her in just 2 weeks. "Keep me on. Not full-time, but a few hours a week to maintain the system and handle ongoing records. Pay me a small salary for that. It will give me steady income while I figure out what to do with my aunt's property long-term." Yates studied her carefully. "Is that really what you want, or are you just trying to have an excuse to stay?" His directness caught her off guard. "Maybe both. Is that a problem?" "Problem suggests I'm unhappy about it. I'm not. I've been trying to figure out how to ask you to keep coming around without it seeming like I'm interested in something beyond bookkeeping." He paused, then continued with obvious difficulty. "But I am interested in something beyond bookkeeping." Sophia's heart hammered in her chest. "What exactly are you interested in, Yates? Talking to you, being near you, hearing about your day and telling you about mine, feeling like someone actually understands the difference between loneliness and being alone." He pulled off his hat and set it on the desk, running his hand through his hair in that gesture she had come to recognize as nervous. "I'm not good at this. Haven't tried to connect with anyone in 5 years. Don't really know how anymore, but something about you makes me want to try." She stood and walked closer to him, closing the distance between them until she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "I don't know how to do this either. I thought I did once, but I was wrong. That man in Boston, I believed we were building something real, but I was the only one actually building. He was just performing. I don't know how to tell the difference anymore between what's real and what's performance." "This feels real to me," Yates said quietly. "Terrifying and uncomfortable and real. I don't have the energy for performance. Everything I've said to you is true, even when I wish it wasn't. Even when you told me I should leave, especially then. Because I knew you'd be safer away from me, from my bitterness and my ghosts, but I still wanted you to stay. That's as honest as it gets." Sophia reached up and touched his face, feeling the roughness of stubble under her palm. He froze at the contact, and she wondered if anyone had touched him gently in years. "I'm not afraid of your ghosts, Yates. I have enough of my own that we're evenly matched, and I'm tired of being safe. Safety got me nowhere good in Boston." He covered her hand with his own, pressing it against his cheek. If we do this, if we try whatever this is, I need you to understand something. I don't know if I can be who I was before Thomas died. That person is gone. I'm working with what's left, and I'm not sure it's enough." "What's left is enough," Sophia said firmly. "I don't want who you were. I want who you are." "How can you know that? You barely know me." "I know you sent your ranch hand to fix my cabin when you could have let me struggle alone. I know you gave me work when you could have found someone else. I know you're honest even when it costs you, and you're kind even when you're trying not to be. I know you've been hurt badly and you're still here, still running this ranch, still taking care of your animals and your employees even though you barely take care of yourself. That's enough to know." Yates pulled her closer slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wanted to. She did not retreat. His arms came around her, and she felt the solid warmth of him, the way his heart hammered beneath her ear when she rested her head against his chest. They stood that way for a long time, just holding each other, two damaged people finding unexpected shelter together. "I'm going to try to do this right," Yates said into her hair. "Court you properly. Take time to know each other, not rush into anything just because we're both lonely." "That sounds wise and sensible." "You don't sound enthusiastic about wise and sensible." Sophia pulled back enough to see his face and was startled to see something that almost resembled amusement in his eyes. "I've been wise and sensible my entire life. Where did it get me? But yes, we should take our time. Figure out if this is real or just two lonely people grabbing at the nearest source of comfort. I'm going to take you to dinner tomorrow night. The restaurant in town, the proper one, not Mrs. Chen's place, though her food is better. But the other one has tablecloths and privacy, and people will see us together and know I'm courting you. You want people to know. I want everyone to know. So when you walk down the street, every man in Jordan Valley understands you're spoken for." A thrill ran through Sophia at the possessiveness in his voice. "I'm spoken for. We just had our first embrace and you've already made decisions." "Yes." He said it with complete certainty, without hesitation or apology. "I'm done pretending I don't want things. Life's too short and I've wasted enough of it already. I want you. I want to try to build something with you. If you want something different, tell me now." "I want the same thing," Sophia admitted. "But Yates, we barely know each other. What if we're wrong? What if this is just loneliness talking?" "Then we'll find out and deal with it, but I don't think we're wrong." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "You're the first person in 5 years who makes me want to try. That has to mean something." She kissed him then, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. He went still with surprise for a heartbeat, then kissed her back with an intensity that made her knees weak. His hands tangled in her hair, and she gripped his shoulders, and for a perfect moment, there was nothing but the two of them and the impossible rightness of it. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow night, dinner, let me do this properly." "Tomorrow night," Sophia agreed, smiling so widely her face hurt. "But Yates?" "Yes. Don't wait 5 more years to kiss me again." The corner of his mouth quirked, not quite a smile but close, closer than she had seen from him yet. Not planning on it, dinner the next evening proved to be an education in small-town attention. Every person in the restaurant watched as Yates held Sophia's chair and sat across from her, as they talked in low voices and shared a meal, as something subtle but unmistakable passed between them. By Sunday morning, everyone in Jordan Valley knew that Yates Jensen was courting the newcomer from Boston, and opinions varied wildly on whether this was wonderful news or certain disaster. Sarah Patterson cornered Sophia at church, where Sophia had ventured for the first time since arriving. "Is it true? You and Yates Jensen? We're seeing where things go," Sophia said carefully. "It's very new. That man hasn't looked at a woman since his brother died. Most folks thought he was done with all that permanently. You must be something special. Or he's just ready to try again and I happen to be here. Don't sell yourself short, dear. I've seen the way he looks at you. That's not convenience. That's genuine feeling. Genuine feeling turned out to be both exhilarating and terrifying. Over the following weeks, Yates courted Sophia with determined sincerity, taking her to dinners and on rides through the valley, showing her his ranch and teaching her about the cattle business, sitting with her on her cabin porch in the evenings, and talking about everything and nothing. He was not naturally romantic, and his attempts at courtship sometimes came out awkward and overly practical. But Sophia found his earnest efforts more touching than any smooth performance would have been. He brought her wildflowers one afternoon, thrusting them at her with obvious embarrassment. "These grow on the North Range. Thought you might like them. I don't really know what women like for flowers." "They're beautiful," Sophia said, genuinely moved. "No one's brought me wildflowers before." The men in Boston would send elaborate bouquets from florists, all arranged perfectly and completely impersonal. "These are better because you picked them yourself. They're just flowers, free flowers at that. They're perfect flowers." She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, feeling him stiffen and then slowly relax into the gesture. The physical progression of their relationship moved gradually, both of them cautious after past hurts. Stolen kisses became longer embraces, became evenings spent wrapped together on her cabin porch while the sun set. Yates touched her carefully, as though she might break or disappear, and Sophia found herself craving that gentleness after years of her ex-fiancé's careless handling of her affections. "Tell me about Thomas," she said one evening as they sat together watching stars emerge. "You've mentioned him but never really talked about him." Yates was quiet for so long she thought he would refuse. Then he began speaking, slowly at first and then with increasing ease. "He was 3 years younger than me. Our parents died when I was 20 and he was 17, and we had nothing but debts to inherit. So we came west to start over, figured we could make something of ourselves if we worked hard enough. Thomas was the dreamer, always convinced everything would work out perfectly. I was the practical one, making plans and working numbers. We balanced each other. He sounds wonderful, he was. Too trusting sometimes, too quick to believe in people. That's what got him killed in the end. He thought he could reason with the rustlers, convince them to return the cattle and avoid violence. They shot him and took the cattle anyway." His voice went rough. "I was the one who should have died. I was older, more experienced. I should have been there. You couldn't have known what would happen." "I should have known." Thomas always needed someone to temper his optimism with caution. That was my job and I failed. Sophia shifted to face him directly. "Yates, you can't carry that guilt forever. It's destroying you." "Some things deserve to destroy you." "No, nothing deserves that. Thomas wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for surviving. You didn't know him. You don't know what he'd want." "I know he loved you because you loved him." People who love each other want each other to be happy, not trapped in permanent grief. Yates pulled away from her, standing and walking to the edge of the porch. "You're asking me to let go of the only thing I have left of him. I'm asking you to let go of the guilt, not the love. You can remember him and miss him without torturing yourself with what-ifs. It's not that simple. It is that simple. It's just not easy." Sophia stood and joined him, taking his hand. "You've taken the first steps already, whether you realize it or not. You smiled at something Charlie said last week. Not a big smile, but I saw it. You're trying again with me, taking the risk of caring about someone. That's not betraying Thomas. That's honoring him by choosing to live instead of just exist." He turned to face her, and in the fading light she could see tears tracking down his face. "I don't know how to forgive myself." Start by trying. That's all any of us can do. Just try. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe, and she felt his shoulders shake as 5 years of suppressed grief finally broke through. She held him while he cried, this strong, bitter man who had kept everything locked inside for so long, and felt something shift between them. A deepening, a new level of trust. When he finally pulled back, he looked exhausted but somehow lighter. "I'm a mess," he said roughly. "We're both messes. At least we're messes together." That pulled a sound from him that might have been a laugh, rusty and brief but unmistakable. "How did you get me to do that? Talk about things I've avoided for 5 years, I asked. "And unlike everyone else, I didn't tell you what you should feel. I just let you feel it. You're dangerous, Sophia Zimmerman." "Is that a complaint?" "No." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and she tasted salt from his tears and something else, something that felt like hope. "That's a compliment." October arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hints of coming winter. The cottonwoods along the creek turned gold, and the ranchers began preparing for the cold months ahead. Yates spent long days moving cattle to winter pastures and reinforcing structures against snow. Sophia continued managing his books and slowly improving her cabin, adding small comforts and making it truly hers. Their courtship became an established fact in the community, no longer worth commenting on. People accepted that Yates Jensen had found someone who understood his silences and drew him slowly back toward the living. Some women clucked about the impropriety of them spending so much unchaperoned time together, but the West had different standards than Boston, and as long as Sophia maintained her own residence, most people considered it acceptable. One particularly beautiful afternoon, Yates took Sophia to see his brother's grave on the hill overlooking the ranch. She had not asked to visit, but he seemed to need to bring her there, to introduce his past to his possible future. The marker was simple but well maintained, the area around it cleared of weeds. Yates stood silent for a long time before speaking. "Thomas, this is Sophia. She's from Boston, which you'd find hilarious since she's nothing like what we imagined city women to be. She's smart and stubborn, and she makes me want to try again. I think you'd like her." He paused, his voice thickening. "I'm going to ask her to marry me. Wanted you to know first. Wanted to see if it felt like betrayal coming here with her." Another pause. "It doesn't. It feels like saying goodbye to the grief, not to you. I hope that's okay." Sophia's heart hammered. He had not discussed marriage with her, had not given any indication he was thinking that far ahead. But hearing him speak to his brother, raw and honest, she felt certainty settle into her bones. This was right. This damaged man with his careful heart and his slow healing was exactly right. They walked back down the hill in silence, and Yates kept her hand clasped tightly in his. At the bottom, he stopped and turned to face her. "I meant what I said up there. I want to marry you, Sophia. I know it's fast, barely 2 months since you arrived, but I don't see the point in waiting when I'm certain. Are you certain? Or are you just ready to move forward and I'm convenient?" "I'm certain about you specifically. About how you make me feel less alone even when we're not talking. About how you understand my grief without trying to fix it. About how you're building a life here despite it being hard because you're brave enough to try." He pulled her closer. "I can't promise I'll be easy to live with. I'm still working through a lot. But I can promise I'll be honest and faithful, and I'll work every day to be worthy of you. Yates, you're already worthy. You don't have to earn me. I want to anyway, so will you marry me?" Sophia looked up at this man who had been so bitter and closed when they met, who had slowly opened himself to her through painful honesty and genuine effort. Yes, absolutely yes. He kissed her with relief and joy, spinning her around until she laughed breathlessly. And there it was, what she had been hoping for, a smile. A real, genuine smile that transformed his whole face, erasing years of grief and making him look young and alive. "You're smiling," she said, touching his mouth. "You make me smile," he replied, sounding surprised by the realization. "I didn't think anyone ever would again. Get used to it. I plan to make you smile a lot." "That sounds like a threat." "It's a promise." They married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the church, with most of Jordan Valley in attendance. Sarah Patterson cried happy tears, and Charlie gave a rambling toast at the reception about how he knew the moment Miss Zimmerman arrived that something would change for Mr. Jensen, because she had the look of someone who did not give up on hard things. Yates actually laughed at one point during the celebration, a sound so unexpected that several guests stopped mid-conversation to stare. Sophia moved into the ranch house, bringing her aunt's carved trunk and books, merging her sparse possessions with Yates' equally sparse belongings. The house felt different immediately, warmer somehow, as though it had been waiting for her to complete it. They spent their first night as husband and wife talking until dawn, learning the final, intimate details of each other's histories and dreams. "What do you want from this life?" Yates asked as the sun began to lighten the sky. "Really want, not what you think you should want." Sophia considered carefully. "I want to build something lasting, not just a marriage, though that matters tremendously, but a life that means something. I want to be useful and respected for my abilities, not just tolerated. I want children eventually, though I'm terrified of that too. I want to prove that leaving Boston wasn't running away but running toward something better." "You're the bravest person I've ever met," Yates said seriously. "You left everything familiar for a broken cabin and an uncertain future. That takes more courage than anything I've done. You're rebuilding yourself after loss that would have destroyed most people. That's brave too. Maybe we're both brave then, or both foolish." Maybe brave and foolish are the same thing. The first year of marriage brought challenges neither had fully anticipated. Learning to live with someone else, to navigate disagreements and different habits, proved more complex than courtship had suggested. Yates sometimes retreated into silence when stressed, closing Sophia out without meaning to, and she had to learn to distinguish between his need for space and unhealthy withdrawal. Sophia sometimes pushed too hard for emotional connection, wanting him to share feelings he was not ready to articulate, and had to learn patience. But they worked through it, committed to the promise they had made to each other. Yates made genuine efforts to communicate even when it felt unnatural, and Sophia learned to read his silences and understand what they meant. They established routines and traditions, small rituals that bound them together. Morning coffee on the porch before the day's work began. Evening rides to check the cattle and watch the sunset. Saturday nights reading together in the parlor, comfortable in quiet companionship. The ranch prospered under Sophia's organized financial management and Yates' skilled ranching. They expanded the operation carefully, buying adjacent land when it became available, improving the herd quality with better breeding stock. Sophia's bookkeeping revealed opportunities Yates had missed, and his increasing willingness to discuss decisions with her led to better strategic choices. They became partners in every sense, each bringing strengths that complemented the other. In the spring following their first anniversary, Sophia discovered she was pregnant. The news brought joy mixed with terror, and Yates held her while she cried from the overwhelming emotion of it all. "What if I'm terrible at this?" she asked. "I don't know anything about babies. What if I do everything wrong?" "You won't do everything wrong. You might do some things wrong, but that's true of all parents. We'll figure it out together." "You're not frightened." "I'm terrified," he admitted, "but also happier than I thought possible. We're creating something new, Sophia, a person who's part both of us. That's miraculous." The pregnancy progressed well despite Sophia's concerns. She continued managing the ranch books until the final weeks, when moving became too uncomfortable. Yates turned attentive and slightly overbearing, constantly worried about her well-being, and she had to remind him repeatedly that women had been having babies since the beginning of time without their husbands hovering anxiously. Their son arrived on a cold November morning, screaming his outrage at the world with healthy lungs. They named him Thomas, for the brother Yates had lost, and when Yates held his newborn son for the first time, tears streamed down his face. "Hello, Tommy," he whispered. "Welcome to the world. You have a lot of people who love you already." Sophia watched her husband cradle their baby with infinite gentleness and felt her heart expand impossibly further. This man, who had been so closed and bitter, now radiated tenderness, transformed by love and healing and the miracle of new life. "He's perfect," she said. "He is. You're both perfect." Parenthood brought new challenges and exhaustions. Sleepless nights and constant demands tested them both, but they supported each other through it, taking shifts and solving problems together. Yates proved surprisingly adept with the baby, patient and gentle in ways Sophia had not expected. "Thomas and I raised each other after our parents died," he explained one night while rocking Tommy to sleep. "I learned then how to take care of someone small and helpless." The ranch community embraced young Tommy with enthusiasm. Sarah Patterson knitted endless tiny clothes, and Mrs. Chen brought special foods to help Sophia regain her strength. Charlie carved wooden toys and taught Tommy to wave when he was still too young to understand. The child grew surrounded by people who had watched his parents' unlikely love story unfold and had invested themselves in the family's happiness. Time passed in the way it does with young children, simultaneously endless and too quick. Tommy grew into a bright, energetic toddler who followed his father everywhere and chattered constantly to his mother. Yates smiled regularly now, laughed often, and the lines of grief on his face had softened into something gentler. He still had difficult days, moments when the past rose up and threatened to pull him under, but Sophia had learned to recognize those times and provide support without smothering him. On a fall evening 3 years into their marriage, they sat on the porch watching Tommy play in the yard, his small form illuminated by the golden light of sunset. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Sophia asked. "How angry you were that I existed." "I wasn't angry at you specifically. More at the universe for putting someone in my path when I'd gotten comfortable with isolation. You told me I'd be on the next stage back to boys. I was very wrong about that." He pulled her closer against his side. "You're the most stubborn person I've ever met. You refuse to give up on anything, including me. I asked you one question and you answered honestly. That's all it took." "What question?" "I asked why you really left, even though you'd never physically gone anywhere. I asked about the leaving behind instead of the moving forward." No one had done that before. Yates was quiet for a moment, remembering that conversation in the broken cabin. That question changed everything, made me realize I could maybe talk about things I'd been avoiding. "You gave me permission to be honest about the pain instead of pretending it didn't exist. And now look at us. A ranch, a child, a life that's actually working." Sophia smiled up at him. "We're not broken anymore, still scarred maybe, but not broken." "I think maybe we fixed each other," Yates said. "Or at least created enough safety between us that we could fix ourselves." Tommy ran over demanding to be picked up, and Yates swung him high, making the boy shriek with laughter. Sophia watched them play, her heart full of gratitude for this unlikely life she had found. She had come to Jordan Valley with nothing but a broken cabin and broken dreams, and she had found something infinitely better. A partner who understood her, a child who delighted her, and a sense of purpose she had never experienced in Boston. The years continued to unfold with the rhythm of ranch life. They had a daughter, Sarah Margaret, born on a warm June day when the valley bloomed with wildflowers. Then another son, Peter, who arrived during a winter storm and proved to have his father's serious nature from birth. The house filled with noise and life, so different from the silent tomb it had been when Sophia first saw it. Yates proved to be a devoted father, patient and present in ways his own father had never been. He taught his children about the ranch, about respect for the land and animals, about honest work and keeping your word. But he also taught them about grief and healing, about how strength sometimes meant asking for help, about how love could survive even the hardest losses. Sophia continued managing the ranch finances and expanded her role to include much of the business strategy. She corresponded with buyers in distant cities, negotiated better prices for their cattle, and developed a reputation for sharp business sense. The Jensen Ranch became one of the most successful operations in the region, respected for both its quality livestock and its ethical management. On their 10th anniversary, Yates took Sophia back to the hill where his brother was buried. The children stayed with the Pattersons for the day, and the couple rode up in the afternoon, carrying a picnic. They ate near Thomas' grave, comfortable in the space that had once held so much pain. "I want to tell you something," Yates said as they finished their meal. "And I need you to understand how much I mean it. You're frightening me a little. Don't be frightened. It's good." He took her hand. 10 years ago, I was a dead man walking. I'd given up on everything that made life worth living. I was just going through motions, waiting for my body to catch up with where my spirit had already gone. Then you arrived with your impractical clothes and your stubborn questions, and you refused to accept my bitterness as final. "You gave me a chance to build something new," Sophia said. "To prove I could be more than Boston thought I could be. You gave me back my life. Not my old life, but something new and possibly better. You and the children, you're everything I have, everything I am now, and I want to make sure you know that, really know it. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone." Tears streamed down Sophia's face. "I love you too, so much that sometimes I can barely breathe with it. We did good, didn't we? Despite everything working against us, despite both of us being damaged and uncertain. We built something real. We built something beautiful." They sat together as the sun moved across the sky, two people who had found each other in the aftermath of loss and created a future neither could have imagined. The wind carried the scent of sage across the valley, and in the distance, they could see their ranch spread out below, solid and thriving. Life continued with its inevitable mixture of joy and challenge. Tommy grew into a young man serious about learning the ranch business. Sarah proved to be as stubborn as her mother and as quick with numbers, often helping with the bookkeeping. Peter showed surprising artistic talent, drawing the landscape and animals with careful attention to detail. The family adapted and grew, supporting each individual's strengths and helping with their weaknesses. Yates' smile became a common sight, no longer the rare miracle it had been in the early years. He laughed easily with his children, joked with the ranch hands, and engaged fully with community life. The bitter cowboy rancher who had not smiled in years had transformed into a man at peace with his past and hopeful about his future. Sarah Patterson commented on it one Sunday after church, marveling at how completely he had changed. "He didn't change," Sophia corrected gently. "He healed. There's a difference. The good parts were always there, just buried under grief. I just helped him excavate them." But Sophia knew it had been more than that. They had healed each other, two broken people creating safety and space for mutual restoration. Neither could have done it alone, but together they had managed what seemed impossible, building joy from the ruins of loss. More years passed, swift and precious. The children grew toward independence, each finding their own path while remaining rooted in the family and ranch. Tommy married a local girl, bringing her into the family business. Sarah attended a women's college in Portland, returning with dreams of expanding their operation further. Peter sold his artwork in galleries, finding success beyond Jordan Valley while maintaining deep ties to home. Yates and Sophia grew older together, their faces weathering with time but their bond only deepening. They settled into the comfortable rhythm of long marriage, where communication required fewer words and understanding ran deeper than conversation. They had built something lasting, something that would continue beyond them through their children and the ranch itself. On a spring morning decades after their first meeting, they sat on their porch drinking coffee and watching the sun rise over the Awahi Mountains. Their hair had gone gray, their bodies moved more slowly, but their love remained as strong as it had been when Sophia first asked her honest question, and Yates first answered truthfully. "You ever regret leaving Boston?" Yates asked. It was a question he had never posed before, perhaps afraid of the answer. "Not for a single moment," Sophia said firmly. "That life would have killed me slowly, death by 1,000 small disappointments. This life has been hard sometimes, but it's been real. Every joy and every challenge has actually mattered. I'm glad you came, glad you stayed, glad you refused to accept my nonsense about you not belonging here. I'm glad you gave me a ride to a broken cabin and agreed to let me reorganize your disaster of an office. Look where it led." "Look where it led," Yates echoed, his eyes scanning the ranch that had become a true home filled with family and life and purpose. "We did all right, didn't we? We did better than all right. We did magnificently." He took her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of decades of practice. "I love you, Sophia Jensen. Have since that day you asked me about leaving rather than arriving. You saw me when I was trying to be invisible. I love you too. Always have, always will." They sat together as the sun climbed higher, warming the valley and illuminating everything they had built together. Two people who had been broken by different circumstances had found each other and created something whole. The bitter cowboy rancher who had not smiled in years had learned to smile again, laugh again, love again. And the city woman who had fled her old life had built a new one beyond anything she could have imagined. Their story, which had begun with a single honest question, had unfolded into a lifetime of honest answers, genuine connection, and enduring love. In the Wild West landscape of Jordan Valley, Oregon, they had found not just survival but true flourishing. They had proved that healing was possible, that new beginnings could arise from endings, and that love, when given the chance, could transform even the most closed and bitter heart. As afternoon approached, their grown children began arriving for Sunday dinner, a tradition maintained through all the years. Grandchildren ran across the yard, their laughter filling the air. The house buzzed with conversation and warmth, so alive compared to the silent structure it had been when Sophia first saw it. Yates pulled Sophia close and kissed her temple. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For asking the right question. For staying when I gave you every reason to leave. For believing I could heal when I'd given up on myself. For building this life with me. For everything." Sophia smiled up at him, seeing not the bitter, closed man she had first met, but the loving husband and father he had become. "Thank you for answering honestly. For taking the risk of opening up again. For loving me despite all my flaws. For giving me a place to belong. You always belonged here. I think maybe you belonged here before you even arrived." Maybe we both did. Maybe we were always meant to find each other in that dusty town on that September day. Maybe so. They went inside to join their family, their hands still clasped together as they had been for decades. The meal stretched long into the evening, full of stories and jokes and the comfortable chaos of multiple generations gathered together. Yates smiled and laughed, fully present and engaged, and Sophia watched him with profound gratitude. Later, after everyone had left and the house had quieted again, they returned to their porch to watch the stars emerge. The valley spread before them in peaceful darkness, familiar and beloved. They had spent their lives here, building something that would outlast them, creating legacy through love and hard work. "I want you to know something," Sophia said as they prepared for bed. "In case I haven't said it clearly enough over the years, you made all of this possible. By being brave enough to heal, by choosing to try again despite the fear. You gave me the greatest gift by letting me love you. We gave each other that gift," Yates said. "Neither of us could have done this alone. It took both of us being willing to risk everything." "Then I'm glad we were both willing. I'm glad fate or luck or whatever you want to call it brought me to Jordan Valley. Brought me to you. Me too. Every single day, me too." They settled into bed together, their bodies fitting naturally after so many years of sharing space. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new joys, as every day did. But they would face it together, as they had faced everything since that first honest question and answer. The bitter cowboy rancher who had not smiled in years had found reasons to smile every day. The city woman who had fled her old life had built a new one of purpose and meaning. Together, they had created something beautiful and lasting, proving that even the most wounded hearts could heal when given patience, honesty, and love. Their story, born in the Wild West landscape of Jordan Valley, had become a testament to resilience and the transformative power of genuine connection. It stood as proof that asking the right question at the right time could change everything, that honest answers mattered more than comfortable lies, and that love, real love built on mutual respect and authentic understanding, could weather any storm and build any dream. As sleep claimed them, wrapped in each other's arms in the home they had built together, neither regretted a single choice that had led them to this moment. They had found what so many searched for their entire lives: true partnership, deep love, and a life of meaning shared with someone who understood them completely. The journey had been difficult, the healing slow, but the destination had been worth every struggle. The stars wheeled overhead, constant in their patterns, while below in the ranch house, two people who had saved each other slept peacefully, surrounded by the life they had created from honesty, courage, and love. Their legacy would continue through their children and grandchildren, through the ranch that bore their name, through the example they had set of how broken people could heal and build something beautiful together. And somewhere in the cosmos, perhaps Thomas Jensen smiled too, glad that his brother had finally found peace and joy again, grateful that Sophia Zimmerman had asked one honest question that changed everything, proud that love had won in the end despite all the darkness that had tried to prevent it. The story had a happy ending after all, earned through persistence and faith, and the simple act of being brave enough to try again when trying seemed impossible. In Jordan Valley, Oregon, in the Wild West that had witnessed countless stories of struggle and survival, this particular story stood as something special. A reminder that the human heart, no matter how damaged, retained the capacity for healing and love if given the right circumstances and the right person to share the journey. Yates and Sophia had found those right circumstances in each other, and in doing so, they had created something that would endure long after they were gone. Their love story, which began with bitterness and ended with joy, served as inspiration to everyone who knew them. It proved that it was never too late to start over, never too late to heal, never too late to open your heart to the possibility of connection. All it took was one honest question, one truthful answer, and the courage to see where that honesty might lead. And in their case, it had led to everything: family, purpose, belonging, and a love that deepened with every passing year. They had taken their pain and transformed it into strength, their loneliness into companionship, their doubts into certainty. They had built a life worth living together, one day at a time, one honest conversation at a time, one smile at a time. The bitter cowboy rancher had learned to smile again because a city woman had cared enough to ask the right question. And in answering, in opening himself to the possibility of connection after years of isolation, he had discovered that healing was not betrayal, and new love did not diminish old love. He had learned that the human heart had infinite capacity for love if given permission to try. The city woman had learned that running towards something was not the same as running away, that starting over required courage she had not known she possessed, and that building a life of meaning mattered more than building a life of comfort. She had learned that her strength went deeper than she had imagined, and that love, real love, was worth every risk. Together, they had learned that healing was possible, that broken people could create wholeness together, and that sometimes the most unlikely connections proved to be the strongest. Their story had a happy ending because they had both been brave enough to be honest, vulnerable enough to show their wounds, and patient enough to allow healing to happen at its own pace. As the years continued to unfold beyond their story, their legacy remained. 3 children who understood the value of honest communication and genuine connection, a ranch that prospered through ethical management and strategic planning, and a community that had witnessed the transformative power of love and remembered it. Their grandchildren would hear the story of how a bitter cowboy rancher and a fleeing city woman had found each other and built something beautiful, and those grandchildren would carry the lesson forward into their own lives. The mountains that surrounded Jordan Valley had witnessed countless human dramas over the centuries, but few as quietly powerful as the story of Yates and Sophia Jensen. Their tale was not one of dramatic rescues or grand gestures, but rather the steady accumulation of small choices to be honest, to be present, to keep trying even when it felt impossible. It was a story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things simply by refusing to give up on themselves or each other. And so the story concluded, not with an ending but with a continuation, because the best love stories never really end. They ripple outward through time and generations, influencing lives yet to be lived, inspiring hearts yet to be opened. Yates and Sophia's story would live on in the lives they had touched, the family they had raised, and the example they had set. They had proved that one honest question could change everything, that genuine connection could heal even the deepest wounds, and that love, when built on a foundation of mutual respect and authentic understanding, could withstand anything the world threw at it. They had transformed bitterness into joy, loneliness into companionship, and pain into strength. They had built a life of meaning and purpose together, and in doing so, they had created something that would last forever. The bitter cowboy rancher smiled every day now, surrounded by family and love and the life he had built with the remarkable woman who had refused to accept his bitterness as permanent. The city woman had found her place in the world, proving her worth through intelligence and determination, and creating a legacy that extended far beyond herself. Together, they had accomplished what neither could have managed alone, and their happiness stood as testament to the power of honest questions, truthful answers, and the courage to try again, even after devastating loss. Their story ended where it began, on a ranch in Jordan Valley, Oregon, but everything had changed. The broken cabin had become a thriving home. The bitter, closed man had become a loving husband and father. The fleeing city woman had become a respected rancher and businesswoman. And two lonely, damaged people had found healing and wholeness together, creating something beautiful from the ruins of their separate pasts. It was a happy ending earned through persistence, built on honesty, and sustained by genuine love. It was the best kind of ending, the kind that felt like a beginning, full of promise and possibility and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you have found where you truly belong. And in the wild west landscape of Oregon, under the vast sky and surrounded by mountains, Yates and Sophia Jensen lived happily ever after, together, complete and finally, perfectly at peace.